All right, everybody. Bill Scher is back. As you know, he is the politics editor of the fabulous Washington Monthly, which I encourage all of you to read, not just because of its news, but because it has the courage to imagine how we make America better, and always has, really always has. Bill, so much this week, but just let's start with Donald Trump's unbelievably ugly, racist video about the Obamas. The senator from South Carolina, back from the dead, said it was a terrible thing. Susan Collins didn't like it. But I mean, I can't imagine a president ever posting anything as disgusting and racist as that. And, when his own crowd gets mad at him about it, why aren't they mad about the same racism that animates attacking Haitians, in Minneapolis, Haitians in Ohio, or Somalis in Minneapolis?
Trump's been a disgusting racist for a long time. That there's no reason to think that's going to change. But it may be that other Republicans start to find the courage to articulate their opposition to it. And maybe courage isn't the right word, because anyone who's looking at the numbers can figure out that Trump's stock in the country is tanking. Now, he pulled off a goalish yet interesting political trick in 2024 by being pretty overtly racist on a number of occasions, while also making inroads in the Black and Latino communities. And so if you're a Republican at that moment, you're saying, hey, all these things that Democrats said, we have to be more open to diversity, we had to be more open to immigration. I guess that's not true. We can win enough votes amongst people of color and appeal to racists at the same time with the magic of Donald Trump. Let's keep.
I lost you at let's keep going.
Okay. The problem for the Donald Trump playbook is that you can only maintain this dichotomy for so long. He was able to appeal, and he didn't win majorities of Latino and Black voters, but he won more than had happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
On the presumption that, one, he's going to make my quality of life better, my cost of living is going to go down, he's going to help tame inflation.
Yeah, strike that from the list. Didn't happen.
And two, the things he's talking about, immigration, it's not going to affect me. He's going after criminals, not me, not my family, not my friends.
You strike that. That didn't happen.
Right. So as Trump has always been a more effective politician when he is not in power. When he is in power and the sales job meets reality, he does much worse. He had a bad 2018 midterm, losing the House. He had a bad 2020 reelection, losing the presidency and the Senate. Didn't even do a lot great in the midterms of 2022 because a lot of his endorsees were still flogging the fictions about 2020, which didn't help him. But 2024, he could do this little, jiu-jitsu trick, and now that's all falling apart. So if you're Tim Scott, if you're Susan Collins, who's on the ballot in 2026, and plenty of other Republicans, particularly in Southeast and Southwest states, which are not only important, in any election, but are growing in importance because of population shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Post 2030 census, we're expecting them to get more House seats, more electoral votes. They're going to have to find a way to maintain Latino and Black votes, or and the Trump plan, the Trump strategy doesn't work. And the most clearest example of that is what we just saw in Fort Worth, Texas, with the state Senate special election.
I want to talk about that election, and I was going to talk about it later, but let's talk about it now. What did you take from that? That is for a state Senate seat. It was a flip, right? So what did you take from that?
Well, I wrote back in August. I mean, it's not, don't want to make it all about
Taylor
me.
Remmett, right? Taylor Remmett.
Yeah, Taylor Remmett, Democrat who flipped the state Senate district in the Fort Worth suburbs.
Yeah.
This is a suburban district with a growing Latino population.
Yeah.
When Texas Republicans redrew the House district lines, I wrote about this back in August. I'm not
You and I talked about this on our show.
Not late to this train.
Yep.
They try to create 5 more Republican districts for themselves. They did it. 4 of those 5 districts were heavily Latino.
Yeah.
And typically when you're gerrymandering professionally and properly, you don't base your decisions based on the last election, but the last several elections. You're trying to maximize or spread out your reliable vote in more districts.
Yeah.
You're not hinging it based on a swing vote that just swung one time most recently, because that vote can swing back. And so I flagged this problem back in August.
Yes, you did.
And now you're seeing it happen in real time. This is a place that these are the types of voters that Republicans thought they're going to hold on to, but we had plenty of poll data. We had plenty of their special election data over the last year saying Latinos are scurrying away from what they did in 2024. Again, both on the inflation front and on the immigration front, what Trump's doing isn't working.
I mean, Bill, when you gerrymander like they did, they took districts that, I'm going to make up this math, but it's not completely crazy. If you have districts that are 15% reliably Republican, and you need to carve out a few more of them, you end up making them 10 or 12% reliable. You take down that cushion that you have. And when you then say, and that, by the way, that cushion is largely made up of swing voters, I mean, this could all backfire on them.
I mean, it's looking like ripe for backfire now. I mean, gerrymandering is generally kind of a game of inches, and not necessarily helpful in a wave situation.
Right.
And they can make waves bigger because if you're spreading your vote too thin.
Yep.
And a wave's coming.
You can get
that gerrymandering is the opposite of a firewall.
Right.
And I think more and more Republicans see that these numbers are not adding up for them, that Trump is not a help to them in the short term, and probably won't be a help in the long term either, because he's not going to be on the ballot. Whatever magic he has to offer you is not going to be available, because he's not going to be around. I mean, he can try to be the power behind the throne, but if posting racist videos and occupying cities and deporting people who don't need to be deported, or is illegal to deport, which is disruptive to families, to communities, to the economy, while you're laying tariffs on top of that, like, none of this makes any rational sense.
No.
Like, no kids would ever instruct this playbook. There's just Trump's like a shot of heroin that's worked out a couple times, and so Republicans have tried to kind of ride that train for as long as they can.
Yeah.
But it's not sustainable political strategy, and so don't be surprised if more and more Republicans start to call Trump out on it.
Well, let's talk about the media for a minute. So we heard a lot about this flip in Texas. I think Saturday this week, Louisiana has a special election in the 60th House district, and it's held by a Democrat, and the Republicans have a chance to flip it. If they succeed, I expect the media will be all over it, claiming the Democrats' string of victories is over, that the world has endorsed Donald Trump, that Democrats are by definition losers. And of course, if the state remains Democratic, I expect no one will hear about it.
That's probably, but again, the district in Texas is not just a random district. This is the linchpin of the type of voter that the Texas gerrymander depends upon. Number one, that's just locally in Texas.
Texas is different. Yeah.
Right. Two, Texas and Florida are kind of white whales for Democrats. So I don't want to act like it's sort of in the bag for Democrats now. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But
I've lost too many bets betting that Texas would finally flip.
But the Latino vote in general is a critical swing vote, not just in Texas, but elsewhere. It's not a monolithic vote by any stretch, because a Tejano is different than a Cuban in Florida in terms of what their interests are. Yep. But we did see a lot of similarity in movement amongst Latino voters across the country in 2024, whether it was Venezuelan, Cuban, Tejano, Puerto Rican, Puerto aren't even immigrants, but nevertheless, we saw some similarities in movement in that election. And to the extent that what they care about is the economy, like lots of other voters, it's not necessarily, racial or ethnic in interest,
Right.
but is clearly relevant. Trump promised a better economy and has not delivered. And so if that could very well be an impact, across the board, cutting across racial groups. But if you're seeing it, I mean, we saw the Latino vote move to the Democrats in Virginia, in New Jersey, and Texas. So it's not just one place. So an anomalous thing might happen in Louisiana, fine, hardly a swing area. That's not going to negate all the other. I mean, Texas is not just a single isolated data point. It's part of a longer trajectory.
Yeah. All right. So let me talk about a few other things with you. You wrote this piece in this month's Washington Monthly entitled "Trump's Ephemeral Presidency," and I want to get to that. But before we get to that, it can't be ephemeral until he's gone.
Sure.
Right. So let's talk about a little bit about that. People like me don't think we're not going to have elections. I think we're going to have elections, and I think if they're really close in some districts, so close that we don't know the results that night, and it's going to go into a couple of days of counting, that they can steal that. They're going to send people to the door like they did in Arizona in massive numbers. Bang, they could steal that. But if there is a blowout election, they cannot steal it. They just can't do it. But I'm interested to know, what are your thoughts on how secure the elections are, what we have to do to make them secure, and what margins we're going to need in order to win them?
Well, I don't know if you saw what I wrote this morning.
I did.
All right. Because I did try to do a deep dive on this. I think the first thing to start with is the bluster you're getting from Trump is a sign of weakness, not strength. He is worried about the midterms. And the comment that he made on a right-wing podcast earlier this week about nationalizing the elections, he didn't say, I'm going to nationalize the elections.
Republicans should.
Why aren't the Republicans nationalizing the elections?
Right.
He's complaining. He's mad that someone else isn't doing his dirty work. If he had the capacity to just take it over, he probably would. I mean,
they've taken ballots in Georgia to try and do something. And I think they did in Puerto Rico too.
But we go farther back. Trump in March, almost a year ago, had an executive order saying that that they had the right to prevent mail elections, to impose proof of citizenship requirements across the country, and that states had to hand over their voter data to the feds,
on the theory that states are agents of the federal government.
Right. That's right.
That's been a Republican theory for what? How many long?
For about a New York minute. But the states aren't coughing up the data. Trump is suing them. He hasn't won any of these cases yet. At least two of them, the lower court put an injunction on the order. And so the executive order is not getting him anywhere. The shakedown of the state's not getting anywhere. He can even send ICE agents into Minnesota, have the Attorney General say, hey, maybe you should give us your voter data, and maybe these guys can come back home. Wink, wink.
Extortion.
Minnesota's not falling for that. And so now they're throwing their effort into this SAVE Act, which is again supposed to have national voter photo ID, national proof of citizenship. Proof of citizenship means driver's license isn't good enough. Passport, birth certificate. And even the logic of this kind of escapes me. I just looked at the list of passport rates by state. The states with the least amount of passports, it's all red states.
And the women will not. You need a birth. If your name's not what it was on your birth certificate, they're going to say you can't vote. So if you change your name to get married, you're out of luck, and you don't have a passport.
You just show more proof by that. How many people do you know where their birth certificate is? There's people who couldn't even locate it if they wanted to.
And if they do, it costs something. There's a cost associated with getting it.
Right. And I know there's some concern this is going to hurt, non-white voters more than white voters. But I don't think it's necessarily going to be that clean. Plenty of Republicans don't have passports, can't find their birth certificates. It's hardly like a surgical strike. And this is even to me would pass, which it's not going to pass. There is no way this bill is getting through the Senate, which is why you're starting to see Republicans enter a circular firing squad position, because we saw it with Democrats 4 years ago. They felt that it was existential. There was no way they could win anything unless they pass the voting rights bill. I don't want to be dismissive and glib about voting rights. I'm not saying voting rights is important. Of course it is. But they told themselves that they could not win anything at all unless they got this bill passed, which wasn't true. They won a whole bunch of things in 2022. They gained a Senate seat in 2022. They won governor's races in hotly contested swing states, Georgia, Arizona, and the like. But they were so convinced that they had to have it. They wanted to limit the filibuster. They trashed, I'm not saying these are the greatest people in the universe, but they trashed cinema and Manchin, because they're so mad. And now you're seeing Republicans do this.
Yeah.
Their backs are against the wall of the midterms. They know it. They see the numbers. They're panicked. They have glommed onto this SAVE Act as going to be their savior. That's what they think it is. Which one I don't even think it is, even if it got passed.
Right.
But
it isn't going to pass.
And they're telling themselves if they don't pass it, that all is lost. All these illegal immigrants are going to vote unless we pass this thing. And I'm going to get mad at John Thune. It's John Thune's fault if he doesn't eliminate the filibuster or impose a talking filibuster. So I don't know if you remember back, 4 years ago, some Democrats felt all we need to do is change the rules to get a talking filibuster. That's going to fix everything. And I had to keep telling folks, like, you can do a talking filibuster right now. You don't have to change any rules.
Right.
The majority leader can dictate that.
Yeah.
And they don't, because you would just grind everything to a halt. It's why you have a silent filibuster, so you don't grind all their business to a halt. And here's Thune saying, guys, we got highway bill, we got a permitting bill.
It won't pass, but it doesn't have to pass for Donald Trump to say, see, I told you, the Democrats are protecting these illegal voters, and so you shouldn't trust the election results. And he can replay to, January 6th. And this time he can say, see, I told you, they don't want to clean it up.
That's great for narrative purposes.
Well, narrative purposes got us January 6th.
I'm sorry?
Narrative got us January 6th.
Oh, I can't promise you there's not going to be some kind of violence because of the way Trump's talking. There could well be violence, and I don't want to be glib about that either.
Yeah.
That's different than actually being able to steal elections, to suppress vote, to manipulate vote counts.
Yeah.
They had January 6th because they couldn't stop the vote count, and they were mad.
Yeah.
Trump is never going to concede a point. He's always going to want to say, I really won 2020. Heck, I got these ballots from Georgia. Look what the ballots show. They show I won. You see?
They show Italian lasers changed the results. Yeah, that's why Tulsi Gabbard was there.
You can say it all day long.
Yeah.
It's not going to change who is administering the elections in the 50 states, and those are the 50 secretaries of state who, by and large, are not MAGA people, are not even the Republicans. I mean, there are a few out there. For the most part, they're not election deniers. And I mean, doing funny things with vote counts is still illegal. I mean, it is possible to be prosecuted for it. And you may think that Trump's going to
somebody sitting in jail in Colorado.
That's right. It can happen.
Yeah.
So everyone's got to think twice about how far they want to take this thing. And look, we still have courts. We still have the Constitution. We still have law. I'm not saying the Supreme Court is super awesome. I'm not saying I agree with most of their decisions, but they didn't let Trump steal the election in 2020.
Yeah.
I think there are lines that they're not willing to cross. We just saw it in December. Trump tried to force Illinois to be occupied by the National Guard.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court said, you can't do that.
No. So the Texans who came up here ended up sitting at a naval base near the city. They were never allowed to deploy, and it cost taxpayers, I think it was $26 million for the privilege. Right. Yeah.
So
really important points, Bill. All really important points.
So doesn't mean we should be sanguine, of course.
I got it.
You have to prepare. You got to get your legal arguments ready. You have to be on alert at all times. But
from a political purpose, I looked at your headline this morning, which said, I can't remember. It was like,
how worried should we be?
How worried should Democrats be?
Yeah.
And I want to just say that elections don't feel like Democrat versus Republican in the normal sense. I mean, I know one's going to win, the other's going to lose because we have two parties. But the idea of elections isn't partisan. It isn't a wedge issue. I think the headline writer should say, like, how rich should Americans be? It's really not. That's just not that one doesn't feel partisan to me. But
I agree fully.
Yeah. All right. Let me go to your other piece, the big piece that you wrote about the ephemeral president.
Okay.
And let me just start with something that you probably didn't write, but I loved that was in there, which was the cartoon at the top, which was a picture of Mount Rushmore looking a little battered with a sign hanging on it that said Donald Trump's face used to be here.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Talk about it.
Well, at the year point of this term, a lot of folks were taking stock, like, how much damage is being done here? Have we lost something? Have we lost our democracy? Have we lost the global rules-based world order? And look, I'm not going to deny a lot of damage isn't being done. Of course it is. And that some things are not reversible. But by and large, what Trump has done has not been through legislating, which is more durable. I mean, if you get a bill passed, particularly if it's passed through regular order, 60 votes in the Senate, bipartisan, right, that's not going to be quickly repealed. You got some buy-in on the other side.
No, that's right. The Republicans tried to appeal the ACA forever, and they can't do it.
They can't. I mean, even that one, technically speaking, it was partisan because Democrats had a 60-vote supermajority for a short period of time. But it still involved a lot of compromise. It involved a lot of compromise with the insurance industry.
Yeah, it's not.
And they don't want to junk it.
It needs improvement, but they can't kill it.
That's right.
That's your point.
Right. I mean, it would cause such disruption that even when they tried, both in the first term and the second term, they just can't get there.
Yeah.
Biden's infrastructure bill. You don't see Trump trying to get rid of it. He's trying to slap his name on things that are part of that bill, but he's not going to kill it. There's literally just the basic quantity of legislation is at a low point for the first term.
Except for the one big beautiful bill,
right,
whose only enduring feature is the long-term funding of a concentration camp system and an out-of-control national police force to fill it.
I mean, other parts there, again, something that's not even popular.
No.
Healthcare cuts not popular. Tax cuts for the wealthy aren't popular. So there's not a whole lot that you're not seeing Republicans bragging about this bill as they run for re-election. No. And since it was done in a partisan way, when Democrats get their next trifecta, White House, House, Senate, those healthcare cuts and those tax cuts to the wealthy, boom, they're gone. It's not built to last.
Right.
So executive orders that Trump has done can be reversed by other executive order if they're not being blocked by the courts already. Other things are, internationally speaking, a lot of talk lately about, Europeans pulling away from our alliance, trade deals with China or with Qatar, for example, hedging their bets, putting more money into their own defense. I mean, I don't want to see our alliance with Europe shattered, but at the end of the day, it's not that bad if Europe kind of spreads their love around. It's not the death knell of our relationship. And as soon as Democrats put forth a president that wants to restore that alliance, Europe's going to be like, great, let's do it. They don't want to push us away. They're just worried they were less reliable, which I understand. But once the American public rejects what Trump has been giving them, those relationships can be repaired, I think, quite easily. And similarly with the tariffs. I mean, it's not going to be hard for Democrats to say, here, Democrats rarely get to say, here's a tax cut off the top. Here's their chance. Yep. They don't even pass a law. The next president just do it on day one. Boom, tariffs gone.
Yeah, good for everybody. By the way, when is the Supreme Court supposed to tell us about tariffs?
It's on their desk. They had the arguments already, so really can have at any time between now.
When's it convenient for John Roberts?
I'm sorry.
When's it convenient for John Roberts?
Yeah. I honestly don't know what the holdup is there. Yeah. We had this period where people didn't know, if the court was going to even take up overturning Roe v. Wade, and people were kind of waiting every week. Are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? And some people like me thought maybe they're not going to do it, but I was wrong. They did it. So, I mean, it's going to come down eventually. I don't think we can necessarily read tea leaves what it means. Maybe it means it's going to be a really kind of convoluted ruling. But whatever it is, I mean, even if they say that Trump violated the law, Trump's going to slap on tariffs through some other law, whether it's legit or not, and then you'll go through that court process, and that will take some time. So there's almost surely going to be some kind of
politics
tariffs.
is the answer. It's going to happen through the political system.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mean I think there. What about the damage done to civil society? You know, I mean, Americans like me have lost so much confidence in the people who said they were our leaders. The leaders of law firms, the leaders of universities, the leaders of corporate media, you know, all of whom were just eager to sell us out for their third house on Martha's Vineyard. I mean, how does America recover from the internal damage that this man has caused or shown us?
I mean, it's obviously not exactly the same, but I mean, I grew up in the 80s. Plenty of people at the time thought, I can't believe Ronald Reagan's president. How do they vote for this idiot? Where is America gone? How are we ever going to come back? How is it ever going to be progressivism again? You know, and the pendulum, of course, eventually swung back. Or when George Bush became president and the Iraq War happened, I remember how we were ever going to get over this again. America it's futile. We're never going to get anywhere in this country.
We didn't get over it. Each of those was a shock to the system that made people more distrustful of government, more certain that government couldn't help us, more willing to vote for a madman like Donald Trump, who said, "I'm your retribution," because nothing works. So
we have a long range, you know, erosion of trust in institutions, which is not good. And I don't claim to have the magic answer to fixing that. I mean, obviously, when people can say all day long, well, just make government work better. Like the whole part of the problem is that managing a federal government is not a simple task that you just do over a day. But I do think that what Democrats should be doing, and it's something else that I wrote about in that ephemeral presidency piece, is part of what has to be done is to rebuild the federal workforce that's been decimated by Trump. If you want the government to work better, you have to be able to attract good talent into the federal government.
I don't think that'll be hard. I think people will be eager to raise their hands.
And there needs to be, you can go back to John F. Kennedy and the Peace Corps, and it's the kind of thing where I think people kind of know what happened there, but actually reading the words and seeing how fast that turned. I mean, literally, Kennedy gives a speech summoning the idealism of America at the end of the 1960 campaign in November, and floats the idea of a Peace Corps in that speech. And almost immediately, all these young Americans are sending in letters saying
when
that they want
to sign up. Yeah.
And Kennedy says in March, you know, he's been president for 2 months. He's saying we're getting more interest in the Peace Corps than the rest of the federal government. That's the kind of chord that he struck. And I think that people are going to be so exhausted and disgusted and bereft at the literal rubble of the government that you can see with your eyes in Washington, D.C. right now. And if someone can come along on the Democratic side and say, you know what, we can come together as a people and rebuild this. And if you want a job with meaning that you're going to be proud of, you're going to look back on and say, I did that. We have all sorts of positions open right now across the government that you can be a part of. I think there's going to be a real appetite for that that could heal a lot. I mean, I can't promise you that we're going to extinguish every ember of proto-fascism that we've seen in this country, but I think we can get back on a better track and summon the people's better angels.
Well, all right, Bill, that's going to be our last word today, but I love ending on better angels. And for all of you, sign up, read Bill's work, get the Washington Monthly. It's part of Better Angels. It's just part of being ready to do the job that we all need to have done. Bill, as always, it's a pleasure to catch up.
Same here. Take care.